Welcome, Bastronauts. This is Teal's Bass Galaxy, an endless dimension of fishing legends and degenerates connecting through raw, real, in-person conversations and stories. No, this is not your average fishing podcast. There's no rules. There's no limits. 3, 2, 1, blast off. This podcast is intended for mature audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's been confirmed. Aliens from another planet have landed on Earth. Sources say there's been 2 confirmed landing points for these extraterrestrial beings. One being Japan, and also, unexpectedly, in Minnesota at Waypoint Angler Supply, a local tackle shop on Lake Minnetonka. With the ever-expanding universe, it's no surprise that there are other planets out there that also share our love for the sport of bass fishing. And to Earth's surprise, this latest visit came from extraterrestrial fishermen light years away and many innovations ahead when it comes to fishing equipment. Some hypothesize these beings came from the planet of Naboo, matching up with Mayan folklore dating back thousands of years with fishing equipment ahead of their time. It has been confirmed they left things never seen before by an Earth-born bass. Waypoint Angler Supply is the premier space station in the bass galaxy and has tackle that could previously only be found in Japan or the planet of Naboo. The Waypoint ship is full, but we don't know when the Bastronauts from Naboo will be back. So hurry in to Waypoint Angler Supply today and stock up on that Area 51 Planet of Naboo JDM good before your buddy is whooping that sweet ass of yours. Stop into their store on Lake Minnetonka or visit their website, waypointanglersupply.com. That's waypointanglersupply.com. In the month of September, use the code GALAXY2402 to save 20% on your next tackle binge. The Bass Galaxy is also supported by Vocelka Fishing and Customs, Supreme Lending, Dream Team, Lake Country Insurance Services, My Wedge Motor Support, just north of Memphis, Barbecue and Catering. Thank you. It's an honor to have both of you. Brett Hite, Mike McClelland. Never thought I'd be sitting at a picnic table with you two down here in Stoddard, sitting next to the river you're about to fish the next Bassmaster Open on. So thank you guys. It means a lot.
Definitely looking forward to it.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Yeah, very cool kind of scenario here, beautiful Mississippi River.
Yeah.
And up here in Wisconsin, the weather's phenomenal right now. It's just gorgeous out.
That's the reason I've stayed up here for the last 6 weeks.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Getting in on a little of what Minnesota has to offer, and looking forward to Wisconsin too. I like the river down here.
It's a beautiful place, and I guess I call kind of this area home, but I think what's cool to me is there's a lot of chatter in the fishing industry or whatever, but I grew up watching both of you in your dominant stages of your career, and I'm not saying you're not about to go do that.
I was like, what's happening here?
It's not what I meant by that, but I guess we've seen a lot of changes in the sport, and it's cool to probably be you guys and be able to look back at bass fishing in the 90s versus today. A lot of people, the sport's grown a lot since then. A lot of people forget where the heck we came from, and I think that's something that's super important to me, and it's made it challenging to see how fast that sport's progressed. I mean, we've seen it change faster than ever with the internet, the way you guys used to go find bass, learn about bass fishing, figure out how to do it is a heck of a lot different than the way we do it now.
I would have to definitely agree, and Hyde is a little younger than I am. Even we started really pretty close as far as pursuing a professional career. But I mean, I look back to how I learned. I mean, it was watching Bob Cobb and the original Bassmaster show on TNN, or it was picking up every issue of just Bassmaster magazine back then, or the various magazines that were available, and just soaking up as much of that information as I could. You could never believe what another angler told you, because nobody was on camera, nobody had anything that could prove how they said they caught them truly actually happened.
There was no live.
Yeah, there was no live, so it's all changed. I mean, it is all changed.
Yeah, there was no live where you can't hide anything on live. I mean, you can, but they're going to find out that the sneaky little guys are going to zoom in and pause it and look at your bait and stuff like that.
Well, I've learned a lot on live. I got a few in the truck. It's crazy what you learn on live.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah, it's but yeah, I mean, I grew up you watched Bassmaster on TNT.
Yeah.
And then you waited for your Bassmaster magazine, and now with the internet, it's just wealth of information, whether it's YouTube or whatever it is, and it's just, I mean, the learning curve is so much faster for these young anglers. And I remember when FLW first started, I think they were the first ones to do the high school and college fishing.
Yeah.
Was FLW. They're like, hey, we got this idea, and we're like, yeah, that's cool. And now it's just absolutely taken off, and it's so cool that, I mean, to get that young blood in the sport, obviously they're kicking our butt a lot, Mike, but to get that young blood in the sport, we wouldn't have that giant influx without that, high school, college angler fishing capabilities. I mean, guys are getting full ride scholarships to go bass fishing.
Yeah, that's what's crazy about it. And when I go speak to high schools and colleges, teams on occasion, it's just shocking to me that these kids don't realize 10 years ago that wasn't there.
That was not a deal.
Mean, they're like, you didn't have high school fishing, you didn't have the opportunity to compete in college. And it's like, no, this all just started.
Yeah.
And a lot of these young kids don't realize or grasp that. I mean, it's what are we looking at? Probably 10 or 12 years that it's taken off.
It's not that far ago, I mean, it literally has changed the sport of bass fishing. And I mean, we always wanted, and it's good for the whole industry. If we get an influx of new anglers that are hardcore bass anglers, it helps my tackle sponsors, boat sponsors, motor sponsors, everything. And without that high school and college fishing, I mean, you would probably have a tenth of those anglers that are getting into it, Mm-hmm. But with that door open, that opportunity that high school and college fishing does for these young anglers is amazing.
Yeah. Well, and like we talked about too, is just the whole internet and the wealth of information that's out there. I mean, these kids can Google any technique that they want to Google today and get instant results, where we either had to depend on trying to ask somebody that we hoped would tell us the truth, or wait till we saw a tournament come out on TNN or whatever it was.
Or it was one of your dad's best friends that was good at this technique, or same thing with me. Like, you had to associate yourself around good fishermen, whether they were tournament anglers or non-tournament anglers. If you associated yourself around those people, you were going to be a good tournament angler. And then you see people like, I just see this random girl on Instagram, and she can hardly cast. She has however many followers, but it's just, she likes to go fishing, which is cool. I'm good with that.
She also probably has a really nice rack.
Yeah. I mean, she's kind of sort of attractive, but yes, yeah. I mean, it's like, but it just.
I get your point.
The social media is change it, but she learned probably watching YouTube videos on how to bass fish.
Yeah.
Maybe her dad took her out once or twice, but I mean, And now she's just fishing a pond, getting a bunch of viewers. Which is cool,
It's definitely changed. I mean, and there's been so many different things that have evolved because of that. I mean, the techniques that we know now are so much different than a lot of the things that we did. They're still derived from some of the things that we did early on.
Yeah,
I look back at my first trip to Lake Mead, and that was back when we were throwing what we call them, slider heads or gitsits, and little finesse worms that we didn't even call finesse worms, and Don Ivino hand poured stuff, and I mean it's basically the same stuff that's always been done, but it's just evolved and evolved and evolved. I mean, who would have thought 10 years ago that shaking a minnow would be as productive as it is? But it's all about what we've learned from our electronics. I mean, I go back to looking at how my life in fishing changed when mapping first hit. I was that kid that studied maps. I mean, nights before tournaments, weeks before tournaments. And when mapping finally hit my units where I could literally turn my unit on and drive from spot to spot on the lake, that's when my whole world of tournament fishing really changed, because it was like everything that I'd always studied was right there in front of me, and it took a lot of people a long time to really catch on to the mapping aspect of things.
I totally agree. I mean, I made my first probably 10 years being a professional fisherman fishing offshore, Me and Aaron and Kota Kiriyama were like the starters of the drop shot, back in the day. It started kind of on the West Coast, and then, I got second, I think it was 2003, 2002, somewhere around there. Top 150 Bassmaster. Mike Iaconelli won. I got second fishing a drop shot at Lake Seminole. And, I mean, I absolutely railed on him fishing a drop shot.
At Seminole.
Yeah, Seminole. Yeah, I mean, it's just way, way off the grid of what you would think at Seminole.
That may have actually been one of the first tournaments that I truly met you and got to visit with you a little bit. And
what year was that?
2002, 2003, probably a little earlier. I first time I remember meeting Mike McClelland, I think Skeet Reese and I were staying together. You and Stephen Browning were staying together in a little strip motel, back in the day, like strip motel. And I think we were at Wheeler Lake. And you guys just came over to a room, just BSing and stuff like that. And that's when I first met Peaw.
And that would have been like in that top 150 era, top 100 era?
Yeah, top 150. So like, 2001, 2003, somewhere around there,
Like, how'd that all come about? To me, like this hearing about like the football jig, how that came out, the drop shot, I've heard a few stories, but hearing like how that trickles into fruition, and you being, in the belly of that beast, so to speak, what was that like? The guy say, hey, tie a weird polymer knot, and you put this pink little tickler on it, and you don't even have to shake it. The waves kind of shake it for you, and maybe you give a little jiggle sometimes, but were you like, was that weird? Was that a weird concept? Was that?
I mean, I
because that's a versatile deal now. Like you can do a lot of shit with that.
Yeah, you can catch them anywhere. I mean, you can catch them on a drop shot from a foot deep to 100 foot deep. I mean, and I literally proved that year. I made the Bassmaster Classic, a year 2000. Me and Aaron made the Classic and the Bassmaster Western Invitationals. And it was, that was like, and I think Kota made it that year, Kota Kiriyama. That was like the start of the drop shot. I mean, I'm not taking claim that I started it in the U.S., but Aaron, Kota, and I were the ones who kind of brought it to the highlight of the U.S.
Did it start in Japan?
Oh, yes. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And we finally were getting tungsten weights. Aaron won a Bassmaster Invitational Lake Orville, and he was catching them anywhere from like 70 to 90 feet. It was a fall tournament. I ended up getting fourth that tournament, and I caught them all on a drop shot too, but not quite that deep, but like 30 to 60 feet, which is, I mean, that's kind of crazy. Yeah.
It's interesting to sit here and have this conversation because I'm sitting here thinking about how the industry has evolved, and I'd never really thought about it, but I mean, in the late 90s, it was still pretty much conventional things that won tournaments. I mean, that was back in the days when, Denny Brower was flipping a jig. And, I mean, the first 2 events I won in the late 90s were on a War Eagle spinnerbait. Yeah. I mean, we were all still pretty conventionally fishing. The Carolina rig was a part of what we did. Yeah. But when you guys from out west first came east and brought the drop shot, I mean, it was just like it revolutionized what was going on in tournament fishing. It really did. And that was one of the very first big changes I think we as anglers started seeing happen, was when we had to put down our heavy line and our big rods and try to learn these new techniques. And that's something I really had never thought about till you just brought that point up.
That's the fascinating thing to me about the history of the sport. And I guess you can, sometimes by looking back, you can sometimes not see clearly forward, but see a little bit forward, and we get stuck in maybe the present or the past too much. But I think you guys have been on the forefront of a lot of really cool things, talking about conventional to now
super
early
finesse.
2000s. Yeah. It's like there's this drop shot and then this chatterbait, and I really want to dig into wigglewort to rock crawler.
Wigglewort to rock crawler.
Because that shit's really cool to me. Really want to dig into, because like shaking a minnow right now, I would equate it to like OG wigglewort guys back then, or you with the jackhammer when that first.
Yeah, there's
these guys pinging a minnow.
Yeah,
they are going into those events with the level of confidence that I feel like you guys maybe felt when you had that thing glued to your hand.
Yeah.
Yeah. A drop shot, being the first guy with a robo-worm.
Yeah.
To go like away from the west. Oh, you got to be licking your damn chops.
Yeah. It was pretty cool. Like I said, I mean, everyone thinks me as a chatterbait guy, but I mean, I literally made my living for like 5 or 6 years fishing structure, and before that,
finesse fishing.
Yeah, finesse fishing.
So what made you, like, because you are known as a chatterbait guy, right? Just like Mike, I think people mistake him as a hardbait guy or just that, but I remember him with a football jig and then beating Snowden with a trick worm on Kissimmee was one of my favorites.
That was one of the hardest tournaments ever to win. I'm telling you, that was Brian and I had known each other for so long, and it was a hard one to win. But
I think
you got to take them when you can
for
take
like
them.
8 hours, dude. Like the cojones. I don't think I've ever seen anybody grind out like that.
I think that's the biggest thing.
We don't call him Peaw for nothing. He's a little slow.
How'd Peaw come about? How'd Peaw come
about?
Here we go.
That's sweet.
No, it was actually Jeff Crete. So
Crete, yeah.
Somewhere along in about the time the elites were taking hold, I guess it would have been 2004. We Jeff and I probably met for the really first time and got to know each other at the 2004 Open Championship, which I did end up going on to win. And so Jeff and I made a pact that next year when the elites kicked off that we were going to room together, travel together. I mean, we were both in about the same position in our careers, getting started. We both had made somewhat of a name for ourselves. Jeff had won an open event on, I believe it was Eufaula, one of the Oklahoma lakes, and we were getting started, and the first 2 or 3 tournaments we stayed together, it was like, dude, this guy is a slob. I mean, like a complete slob. And I thought, man, I'm going to help this dude out. So I show up to the 3rd tournament with a dirty clothes bag. And I'm like, dude, I got you something. He's like, you did? What'd you get me? And I threw him this dirty clothes bag, and I'm like, dude, pick your stuff up. Don't throw it here. Don't throw it there. Just pick it up. That's all I ask. And he looked at me just straight in the eye, and he's like, dude, the last time someone did something like that for me was when I went to college, and my grandfather gave me a dirty clothes bag, and he said, you have officially earned the name Peaw. And that's how it all started, and it has stuck. I mean, Swindle had a lot to do with sticking it, and as bad as she hates to admit it, I think she enjoys it, but, my wife, Stacy, has become Meemaw, so it's Meemaw and Peaw traveling the country, and it stuck. I mean, the close-knit group of people that I travel with probably refer to me as Peaw more often than a lot of folks, but it's pretty crazy how often I'm at a show or something working and, I hear, hey, Peaw, and it's like, I don't know these people, so it definitely stuck.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Peaw, half Cherokee and Choctaw.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, going from a finesse fisherman to, like, kind of one of the poster childs of, like, power fishing a bladed jig, that's a big 180 in style, and I think, like, what's cool to me is the sports that evolved from being a very specialist sport to then a very generalist sport, and now maybe it's just a minnow shaking specialist sport. I don't know, but
we don't know yet.
We don't know, but that's a big transition in style. But I also have talked to Jared Littner, and I know he's very versatile, and I think that versatility does come from the West Coast. Like Aaron Martins is pretty versatile, and maybe it was just you always did both. It's just you had to drop shot because it was the deal at the time.
Yeah. I knew the drop shot was like the new deal, and not everybody was doing it. But I grew up, where my dad and I used to go fishing every weekend. We power fish. Flipping, spinnerbait, like that's what we did. We fish shallow. Then, of course, like May, June, when they started getting offshore, we'd throw a 1 ounce football jig, with the M or the double tail. That's what we did. We either threw a jig or we, flipped and threw a spinnerbait. Like, that was our things.
I think the biggest thing that happened, though, too, and I think it's something we've got to give a lot of the country's, DNRs and game and fish departments credit for, is there was a period of time where a lot of our lakes throughout the country were suffering. And whether that was actually because of mismanagement or if it was, Mother Nature or the largemouth bass virus, a lot of our lakes went through a period of time where they just got really tough to fish.
Really?
And I really believe that when the power fishing era, when Hite first, I remember that era when, the chatterbait was so dominant, it was like a lot of our lakes came back to life. We were fishing across the country, some of the best lakes on 2 different tours. He was FLW. I was fishing the Bass Elites when it all first kicked off. But, we were power fishing on both of those circuits. We were going to Lake Amistad and Falcon, and those lakes were all in their prime at that point in time.
Yeah.
And we didn't have to resort to finesse fishing at that particular time. And I really believe that that's kind of what made that change as time evolved.
Yeah, and I think you just see it. There's more people fishing, so there's more pressure on every lake. And if you look back at it, you can't keep a good lake secret now with the internet. Like if you think when you guys went to Falcon, like in 2006, 2007, not everybody was watching YouTube and watching everything like that. So, the word didn't get out
as quick,
quite as quick. But now, guys start catching 14-pounders at OHIV, like, it's out instantaneously.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, they know. And they're like, hey, Bill, you want to go to OHIV? Yeah, let's go. This guy just got a 14-pounder. Okay. And next thing you know, there's 400 boats at the launch ramp. So,
right.
So sooner or later, with that pressure, you're going to have to downsize and be a little bit more finesse.
Well, and I think that was the whole thing, was we as anglers during that heyday of power fishing, whether it was when I first started competition throwing a spinnerbait or as time evolved, and, a football jig, in my opinion, was still power fishing, but it was way more finessey. It was so much more finessey. And then with the addition of the baits that we started seeing in that era. I mean, baits changed so much from the 90s to the 2000s. I mean, everything became so much more realistic. Our colors even changed dramatically. You know, we went from fishing, you know, black and blue and black grape and you know, those old standard colors to having green
Blueback,
pumpkins.
chartreuse.
Yeah, you know, we had real colors. We had natural looking baits, and it just all evolved as time went on. And again, I really believe that as big as deal as anything was the electronics advancements we saw. You know, with you know, when Garmin first hit the scene, their big deal was their proprietary mapping. You know, they were sending mapping crews to these bodies of water ahead of when we as anglers would go to them. So we had the latest, greatest mapping there possibly was of all these reservoirs we were going to, and it was so easy to travel around and go from lake to lake and utilize this mapping to fish for those fish that were really virgin fish. I mean, those fish had never been touched.
Yeah.
Everybody was still, you know, beating the bank, and maybe they found a brush pile here or a point here that they caught them on. But when mapping first hit the scene, it's the same thing that's going on with forward-facing sonar now. It's just opened up a whole new realm of what anglers are capable of doing out there on the water.
Right. Nowhere's safe anymore.
Yeah, nowhere.
No,
I was thinking about
I
this.
don't want to be a bass swimming around.
I was fishing the other day, and I was thinking about, like, man, I'd be curious to look at my boat inside of it from 10 years ago, or what I used to bring with me to a tournament. And I wonder how different that would look from today. I know it would look really different, but I'd be curious how many lures I still have, you know, that have withstood that test of time. And the jackhammer is one that I think is still consistent and still a player. Like, yeah, it's maybe not a minnow, but in the top 10 of just about every pro event you see, you'll see someone holding it up.
Yeah, no
Rock
doubt.
crawler still has a staple place, I feel like, in
the right
in bass
conditions.
fishing.
Yeah, I mean, like, because I mean, we get reports, you know, of, you know, whether it's hard bait sales, soft bait sales, you know, and how the minnow deals kind of affected that. And it's a trend right now. I mean, obviously it's a way to catch fish very well, you know, and effectively. But I agree that, I mean, chatterbaits kind of stood its test of time, just like the rock crawler, you know, in the right scenarios. And what's funny is his bait and my bait are both kind of like that December to like that that pre-spawn is when they really shine.
Yeah.
Not necessarily that that somebody's not gonna, you know, win a tournament later on it than that. But yeah, it's pretty amazing. Yeah, I would say we got two pretty
Absolutely,
good baits.
but I am curious because I mean we've never really talked about it.
No, I can't tell you.
one-on-one. Yeah, I gotta hear.
So put earmuffs on, Mike.
No, what really made, you know, because he mentioned something earlier that I'm going to get into. You know, what was the difference in the transition from the wigglewort era to the rock crawler? I mean, what was it that made you create the jackhammer versus what you were throwing prior to the jackhammer?
Well,
Great question.
I just think it could run better. There's some little, you know, deficiency. I think that just like you saw in a wigglewort.
Yeah.
You know, like you couldn't cast a wigglewort far enough into the wind. You took care of that. So same thing with mine. Like you cast it out there, sometimes you'd have to jerk it and reel it 5 feet to get it vibrate, and hook, hand-tied skirt, stuff like that. So I just put all those ideas in it after catching, you know, thousands of bass on it, and just made a better mousetrap. And Marizo Shimizu, I don't want you guys to, I didn't just design it myself. Marizo helped me a bunch, or we both designed it along with Evergreen JDM designers. So, yeah, just made a better mousetrap. You know, just like you made a better mousetrap of kind of like a wigglewort style bait, you know?
I mean, it looks really similar, right? I mean, to a guy who doesn't know, hasn't fished those baits, if you gave him this one, this one, this one,
Yeah,
he would say this one's more bougie maybe.
Yeah.
But those key attributes to me is the startup speed.
Yeah.
and
the way it hunts.
you can get it to, and then just the way it comes off grass seems to be a little bit better.
Oh, really?
So, but I'm just saying, you didn't mention.
That's one of those things I'm not supposed to know about.
He's secretive. Yeah. So one of the podcast's main kind of partner supporters, Waypoint Angler Supply, they kind of specialize in JDM equipment. Most tournament anglers and guides are not covered fully or properly. Most insurance policies don't cover exposure due to tournaments and guiding. Taking the chance of using the wrong insurance gives the insurance company an out when settling a claim. How will the insurance company know that you're fishing tournaments or guiding? Well, social media is their number one resource. And guess what? They use it. Lake Country Insurance offers one of the only products that can cover both tournament and guiding use in your vessel. Anglers don't seem to hesitate spending $50,000 to $100,000 for a boat. Why risk that large asset, all because you wanted to save a few extra shekels? Are you nuts? Call the folks at Lake Country Insurance today and make sure you have the proper coverage for your boat before the unexpected happens. Call 612-285-3113 today, or visit their website, lcisagency.com. That's lcisagency.com. Hey guys, Aaron Teal here with Vocelka Fishing and Customs here, and excited to talk to you about my new signature series rod, the Puppet Master. My number one confidence technique is by far offshore power finesse fishing, so we've spent a lot of time and a lot of years creating the perfect bottom contact power finesse rod, specifically designed to fish 3/8 to 3/4 ounce football jigs, tubes, swing heads, dragging a swim bait on the bottom, and any bait that you need to manipulate with your hand and land that fish. This rod is perfect for it. The big thing that we found that was an issue with other rods is they were either too crisp and sensitive, where they were too fast, or they weren't quite sensitive enough and they had the right action. So what Dane built with this rod is the most sensitive bottom contact rod I've ever held in my hands. But the big thing is, on a long cast, it's got the power to drive that hook home, but more importantly, it's got a parabolic action that's going to bend deep down in the rod to make sure that, let's say, football jig or goby tube isn't popping that smallmouth's mouth open and keeping that bait in the back of their head where it belongs, allowing you to have increased leverage and landing more bass. You're going to have to pry this rod from my cold dead hands. This is the Puppet Master. You can find it on VocelkaFishing.com or at Waypoint Angler Supply. Check them out.
Do you trailer your big outboard? Then you need the MyWedge motor support. MyWedge keeps even the heaviest motors safe and secure on the trailer. And talk about easy. Up with the motor, on with the MyWedge, back down, ready to roll. And MyWedge is built to last. It won't rot, it won't split, it won't fail. Guaranteed. Pop on MyWedge centering clips for lateral stability and you're good to go. MyWedge, security in a snap. To order yours, go to mywedge.com.
Sure.
They're kind of like the hookup tackle is down there. They're kind of like that up here in Minnesota.
Yep.
So it's been really cool to kind of dig into that world a little bit, and it's like a whole new dimension. It's crazy how small that country is, how few of lakes they have, yet the absolute thought and artistry behind the products they put out there. And I think
it's amazing, and that's another thing to say, like Mike was saying about, like, we had like a stale color palette like in the 90s, and all this new color palette all started with JDM baits.
Yeah.
1000%. I remember in 1998, 99, I was working at the best pro shop in Phoenix, Fisherman's Choice, and we got like a Rico and a Giant Dog X in. Rico was Rico, and then Giant Dog X Megabass, and everyone's like, they were like, dude, we're not paying $25 for bait. Well, people start paying for them, and they freaking caught them. But the finishes on those were so crazy, like way above anything in the U.S.
And we saw it, even back home. I mean, we've talked about the rock crawler a little bit, but I mean, earlier on, it was the McSticks.
I remember that.
And the old original jerk baits. I mean, I threw a Smithwick Rogue for a number of years, but when Lucky Craft and Megabass first hit the U.S. scene, I mean, it almost made a Smithwick Rogue obsolete due to what Brett's talking about, just the naturalistic colors.
Mm-hmm. Good hooks.
So many things changed. Suspendability.
Yeah.
And that's what, gave me that opportunity coming on board with Spro. That was really my first project with Spro, was to design the McStick.
Yeah.
And, it was really cool to be able to take all of the characteristics, just like Brett was saying about his jackhammer. There were so many things that I liked about a Smithwick Rogue, but Lucky Craft had things to offer that Smithwick never did. And then Megabass, was probably, in my opinion, the color palettes that Megabass first came with was just incredible. So I basically took, everything that I liked about all three of those baits and meshed it in to the bait that I designed, being the McStick. And the same thing carried through on the rock crawler. It took me a little longer to convince Spro that the rock crawler was still a deal, because everyone prior to Spro, in my opinion, tried to knock off a wiggle wart.
Yeah.
And when I first started talking to Spro about designing the rock crawler, it wasn't the rock crawler originally. It might have been the McWiggler, had it not been up to McDonald's. But the rock crawler was like, I didn't want to have another wiggle wart. I wanted a bait that would do things that I learned a wiggle wart wouldn't do by throwing it so much in the Ozarks. I mean, I threw a wiggle wart till the bills would wear completely down on them. It was just one of those baits that you threw, and I wanted to build a better mousetrap, just like you said, a bait that would go deeper, a bait that still would hunt, a bait that had
casted better.
Yeah, it casted better in the wind.
Throw a wiggle wart after you throw that rock crawler. I'll tell you that much.
A wiggle wart with the wind, it's okay, but a wiggle wart with into the wind is no good. But a rock crawler in the wind, you can still make a good long cast and get it down to the depth that you want.
Such an efficient
it's just so crazy. I mean, like, you think about the Japanese influence. I don't think they get enough credit for what they've done to our industry, and actually like how they've changed our bait. And going back to the Rattle and Rogue, I remember going to Table Rock Lake. Okay, this is like right when Megabass and Lucky Craft came out with suspending jerkbaits. You could go to a good pro shop around Table Rock, and you'd spend $15-$20
maybe even
on getting a good, like they would balance them, like, and painting them right, everything like that. So you're like, why wouldn't I just go buy this $14.99? Because that $14.99 or $18.99 price point was like, everyone's like, oh my gosh,
no way, no way will I pay that for a bait.
But then you would go to Table Rock, and you're like, okay, well, the Rogue's the deal. Well, they have these custom ones that are already pre-weighted, custom colors, everything, and you're like, okay, well, it's $18.99, and like everyone's putting out 20s to get them.
Yeah,
and it's like it's the same thing. When we designed the jackhammer, we went to Z-Man, and they're like, I think like $12.99 is the deal. That's the price point. Well, it came out to be $15.99, and they're like, hey, I really don't think we're going to sell that many. So they ordered like 100,000, for a release. And I told them, I was like, it doesn't matter. The cost does not matter.
If it catches bass.
If it catches fish. I mean, look how many, a 110's, what, $25 or $22. It doesn't matter. Like a rock crawler's $12.99 for a crankbait now.
Yeah. And you're going to lose lots of those.
You're going to lose lots of those. So I was like, it does not matter. If it catches fish, it does not matter what the price, because they will, I mean, I remember buying my first Depths 250 slide swimmer for $199. And I was like, oh, please don't cast it off. Please don't cast it off. Because back home for a long time, I mean, we had where they stocked trout. So when I got home, I would never just go fishing. I'd be like, in the wintertime, dude, I'm putting like 2 big poles on the deck. I'm going to go cast it all day.
That's cool.
I mean, like, but I'd only, on a good day, you get like six bites or 7 bites. And on a bad day, you get 1 or 2. But they're all big ones, But I was like, you get excited. It's like that triple trout. Buddy of mine was with me. I had one of the first triple trouts, big giant triple trout. I just caught an 8-pounder, and I go and cast it out there, and I get a little excited and overcast it, and it hits, and it
off it goes.
And it's in Canyon Lake, where they don't call it Canyon Lake for nothing. Yeah. And that triple trout, it don't float. Yeah. It's a slow sinker, but I was like on the trolling motor, like over there. I'm like, okay, the water's like 51 degrees. I'm like, no, I ain't doing it. But you know what I'm saying?
You're going to pay for it if it catches bass.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It does not matter.
You don't put your boat in the lake to just go throw a jerkbait and not catch bass.
You don't put $100,000+ boat and you're like, oh well, I don't want to buy a $25.
At the time they were probably $40,000, $50,000.
Yeah, maybe.
At the time.
Yeah. And it's like, oh well, this day and age, it's like, yeah, I don't want to buy a $20 crankbait. Okay, whatever. Then don't catch any.
And I think that's the whole thing that we're seeing with the evolution of what has happened with forward-facing sonar is simply the fact that it's opened our eyes up to a new method, a new way of catching them, shaking a minnow, swim baits, so many different things.
Jamaica rig.
That it goes back to what we were talking about here. If it catches fish, people are going to go out and do it. And to me, that is what forward-facing sonar has done for this industry, is it has allowed a lot of people that aren't maybe the best anglers, and I'm not talking about the guys that are fishing on the tour levels or the the weekend series, whatever. I'm talking about your just weekend angler. It is allowing them the opportunity to go out and actually catch more fish than they've ever caught. And I think that's the intriguing part of forward-facing sonar, is that it's bringing more people to the sport, and it's so many things that when you look back through time, the Carolina rig. I mean, when the Carolina rig first hit the scene, there were guys that wanted to ban it and outlaw it.
Really?
They did. I can remember, the Carolina rig, because it wasn't a conventional way of catching bass. Well, it didn't happen. And
the janitor?
Yeah. What? I mean, it's just one of those deals. There's always been a controversial bait throughout the whole course of our history.
Yeah, I
that
think
catches them.
I'll fish against Brett Hite if jackhammers aren't allowed.
Yeah. Well, and I saw it. I was at the Lake Gunnersville tournament when Paul Elias won the FLW in the fall on the A-Rig when it first came out. And I'll tell you a funny story. So about 3 months prior, a good buddy of mine, Jonathan Newton, he's like, hey, you need to try this thing. And I'm like, what? And he was from that area. Okay, we're on Pickwick, and he hands me one, and he had it rigged up with he's throwing on ledges with lizards and brush hogs.
Are
and
you
stuff
serious?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. I mean, this is before Paul probably even got him. And I'm like, okay, give me one of them things. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, whatever. I had it in my box. At that tournament, Chris Lane and Brett Hite were the only 2 in the top 10 that were not throwing that bait, and I caught them all on chatterbait. Shocker, but it was. Jay Ellis came up to me and he's like, "You have one?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Why aren't you throwing it?" I'm like, "Dude, I'm catching 25 pounds a day on a freaking chatterbait.
Yeah.
Why do I?" He's like, "Dude, it is the most stupid thing you've ever seen in your life."
Fishing's so interesting that way, and I probably think about this way too often, but I know you two can probably relate.
that thing, that it's double-edged sword, right? That thing that allows you to slice the head off, right? The other side can also get yours, and like the level of dominance you guys have had with different techniques, different styles, different patterns, that has to have come back around. And I've felt that like the last couple years with not adapting maybe as quick as I should to forward-facing sonar, you know, me being a young kid where side imaging comes out and guys aren't that good offshore yet, and I figure it out and I have this little kind of string of dominance, and all of a sudden that thing that got me there, all of a sudden I'm getting my butt kicked and I can't put it down, I can't let it go, or if it's a lure or something like that. I want to hear your perspective on that, because I think there's a lot of anglers that probably feel that way about a certain thing.
They go down that rabbit hole, which is what
dig yourself out.
Which is what has either made their name or is what's done good for them, whether it's a local club tournament or, you know, they're invested in that rabbit hole, you know. And it's like, hey guys, you gotta think big, you know, big scheme of things.
Well, and I think you said it earlier, Aaron. Versatility is the biggest thing that I think has kept the anglers that have maintained a career in this sport in the limelight. I mean, you know, the first events I won were on a spinnerbait. Then it was I'm not going to say Grand was all a football jig, but a combination of a Carolina rig and a football jig, you know, and as time evolved, you know, you mentioned earlier, you know, throwing a trick worm in lily pad stems. I mean,
I think you went on Smith Mountain that year with a War Eagle, or a football jig and a shaky head. Excuse me.
Clark's Hill.
That's what it was.
Yeah,
okay.
and it's that versatility that I think keeps an angler's career moving along. If you ever get to that point where you're so far down that rabbit hole, I mean, and I've seen it happen with anglers. I'm not going to throw names out here, but I mean, when the big swim bait deal first hit the scene, there was a lot of anglers that were so hung up on that, and still are today, that's all they did. They knew if they caught them, they were going to be a hero. But they got caught up so often not catching them that it was a detriment to their career and their ability to stay on top of the game.
Do you think versatility could be a rabbit hole? Because I sometimes think that that's maybe the rabbit hole I'm down. Like, we just talked about how much the sport's evolved. Like, how many lures did you have to choose from in the 90s, Mike? How many lures do you have to choose from today?
Sure.
You can be versatile to your almost, like, it can make your head spin. And I think I go back and forth just myself, like, questioning, am I trying to do too many things and I need to, you know, tame it back? And it's funny, I got the pleasure of taking Kyoyo Fujita to lunch the other day. And probably the best thing that I got from him, I asked him, you know, if he messes with that bite powder that Taku uses. And he looked at me, he said, no listen, anybody. Trust my abilities. And that doesn't mean he's not versatile, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
But it just means he's not willing to, he feels he has the tools he needs, and that's what he rolls with. And he's obviously had some success with that, but I've got more questions than answers.
I think the big thing there is confidence. If you are confident in what you're throwing, and I think B will back me up here. I mean, when you get the right bite or enough of the right bites, the confidence goes through the ceiling, and it will carry you more so than the versatility or the gadgets and the gizmos. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, being versatile is definitely 100%. I mean, to be a true professional bass fisherman today, you can't just be, you know, like straight 80s where like all you did was you're a flipper, you know. So to be good, you have to be versatile. But you have to know when that, just like a baseball analogy, okay, that like I like a fastball, you know, medium range, like you got to know when it's in your wheelhouse and you go for that fastball. But you got to know, be able to still, you know, chip it out over, you know, to right field or left field if it's not in your wheelhouse.
Sure.
You got to be able to, I mean, maybe you might not win, but you got to be able to know, like, hey, I can compete. I can get a top 25 or a top 20, like just, like
Doing
a
what
little bit out of your wheelhouse.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think you have to be versatile, but when that wheelhouse is in your realm, you got to capitalize on it.
I don't think this subject's ever been discussed. And you mentioned confidence, and I mentioned and we just talked about all this. What about forward-facing sonar and what that does to a guy's confidence? Because all of a sudden, now, we're looking at structure and we're looking at fish all day, and we're and how many times have you thrown a lure at fish you're looking at for 4 hours out of that day, and there's 1 hour where it's like you're catching them? And I think the hard thing for me is, like, you're in an area, there's bass, and like the thing you're confident ain't working.
Sure.
You make an adjustment and it maybe works a little bit, but you're getting all this information, like the information we're getting from our screen. Like up in Minnesota, we don't have shad. We don't have, like, the river has shad. That's about it.
Yeah.
So for us, like, fish are pretty structure oriented for the most part, aside from some smallmouth fisheries. So that makes that's, I think, made it really an interesting deal up where I'm from. But just, I think I'm in a spot just maybe in my fishing career where I'm not totally sure how I feel about what I'm doing. I'm not maybe totally sure about, and I think there's a lot of fishermen that can relate, and I think every fisherman's been there.
Is that your sexuality or just like in general in life?
I think we're in Wisconsin. I'm not sure if that's legal here. Brett, I'll be honest. I don't know if I'm gay. I've never tried it.
We're going down a different path. No, I will have to agree with what you said. And I mean, it all goes back to the confidence in what the newer generation of angler is seen in forward-facing sonar versus when Brett and I first, had clear view and side imaging. It was,
or just 2D.
Or 2D.
We fished an area. We didn't see nothing.
Like, I graphed with the big motor so much. You know, now we're on the trolling motor, pretty much graphing.
Yeah.
Silently. I mean, as silent as you can be. Trolling motors these days, Garmin trolling motors is super silent, and you can run 4 miles an hour as fast as the Mercury will.
Well, as fast as you was idle.
Yeah. And you can just cover water silently, and you can see everything in front of you before it swims off. Because we all know, like, maybe past like 30, 40 foot, the boat probably doesn't affect them as much. But you get that, I would say 25 or 30 foot and above.
Or
shallower. When that boat gets over them, they feel it. They feel it. Yeah, they know. You know what it was.
Before the pressure, though.
Yeah, the pressure.
I didn't know this until I heard the John Cox story. That's like the greatest story of all time.
I'm kind of anxious to hear this story.
Yeah, Bull Shoals Lake. You know that lake.
Yeah.
Late summer. George Little told me this story. John Cox was down there and went out fishing. I guess he busted well over 20 pounds on a wacky Senko on Bull Shoals Lake in late summer.
Yeah, that's late summer,
you're throwing reaction stuff parallel in bluff banks. Like, those fish are starting to want gizzard shad. Like, they don't want the boat near them. Throwing a finesse tactic was unheard of as far as, like, catching that kind of bag on that type of day. But I guess the whole bag, he caught it. He would just idle, and then he would shut the boat off, let the boat drift, never put his trolling motor in the water.
Mm-hmm.
Bomb casting a Senko. And you saying just how much that boat affects those fish.
Yeah, 100%.
Is like, that's probably the only guy I've ever heard of to approach his whole day that way.
Towards that.
With the technique he's really good at.
Yeah.
And make it work for him in a talk about not your wheelhouse maybe situation. Florida guy, Cinco guy on Bull Shoals.
On a deep, clear water reservoir.
Right. And you said it there, clear water. There is not a lake in the country, I don't think, that is as clear as Bull Shoals. Well, not in the Ozarks anyway. Bull Shoals is by far our clearest body of water in the Ozarks. And, I mean, we're talking 18, 20, 25 foot of visibility at times.
Down by the dam, for sure.
So it's definitely something that I can see how a John Cox could take to Bull Shoals and benefit from, because the traditional way that we fish the lake would not equate that way.
Have you ever fished a lake and not put your trolling motor in the water?
Like, can I go back on this conversation though?
Yeah,
just from the start.
It's Galaxy. There's no rules.
By the way, George Little's the one who told us this story.
George Little is.
So
I don't even know John Cox.
It could be morphed, George.
George, I trust you.
Come on.
You can talk to Brett Hite.
We want the truth, George. Come on.
No, but he said then he was
cool,
telling
though.
him a story about I think it was Ozarks or one of those lakes, like complete 180, where John Cox, he's practicing for an event and he accidentally rams his boat into a dock, and all of a sudden a big freaking bass shoots out
from under,
flips it. So like most people be like, oh, this is a good dock. What does John Cox do? Starts banging his boat into docks all around the lake and top 10s that thing.
I mean,
and there's still, I guess what I'm trying to say is we have all this information at our fingertips now. It's all there, and we're used to fishing without seeing them. We're used to fishing,
Yeah.
So now we have all this information coming at us, and I feel like it messes with my confidence a little bit.
Well, you get in some spots like there might be 100 bass there, but they are not going to bite.
Totally.
So it can lead you down a rabbit hole where you spend an hour casting at that tree stump right there, where you see, they're bass, and you can sit there and cast and cast and cast, and you just wasted an hour out of your tournament day.
Well, but I think the thing that it basically equates to is, you're not going to catch every bass that you see on forward facing or 2D, but I mean, the thing about it is you have to be around them to catch them.
Yes.
And looking back at the early part of my career, and I think you were in that same era, when we were 2D anglers, I did not stop and fish anywhere until I found lots of life. And in the earlier days of the good 2D inside imaging, you literally could idle over fish that were in 8, 10, 12 foot of water. They hadn't had that pressure. And until I ran into a creek and idled and looked and saw lots of bait or lots of marks on my 2D, I didn't waste the time to fish. And I think that's one of the biggest things that anglers do is they get caught up in fishing structure and cover that they've traditionally caught fish on, thinking that they're always there. And the thing that, to me, forward-facing sonar has proved to all of us is bass don't do what we thought bass have done for all these years. They move and migrate so much more than we ever thought they did. You've got to keep yourself moving until you get in the zone, the lively part of the lake, no matter where you're at in the country.
And that zone might change from October of this year, it might be in this zone. October of next year, it might be in a different zone. That's why I would say, stereotype of people fishing their home lake doesn't really work very well for them. Mike's Mike's a what I would say anomaly because
he's really good on
Table Rock. But you know what I'm saying, because their fishing history. Oh, dude, I smashed them last year at the same time here. Well, if you just erase that out, that guy would be way better because he knows the lake so well. If he would erase that out of his mind, and start hunting for where that zone is. Where's the bait fish? Where do you see the life of the lake? And then that guy's going to know those spots in that area.
That's 100%. You nailed it. And the reason I have had the success that I've had on Table Rock, because it is about the zone.
It's pelagic lake, too.
It has nothing to do with
pelagic.
Pelagic.
Yeah.
Nekosaki,
Zako,
Rapala.
Exactly. But it doesn't have anything to do with a particular bank, a particular brush pile. Every time I've had success on Table Rock, it has been because I found a zone of the lake that was alive.
Yep.
And I fished whatever came in front of me. I mean, chasing wind is a big deal when you get to lakes like, and I think it's a big deal anywhere, but I mean, on the Ozark Lakes.
Attention all Bastronauts. This podcast is supported by the Bass Galaxy's title sponsor, Waypoint Angler Supply, the Midwest's new landing pad for hardcore anglers just like you and me. If you're looking for the sneaky goods you can't find anywhere else, look no further. Waypoint Angler Supply has the largest offering of JDM tackle in the Midwest, and they are right here in Minnesota on Lake Minnetonka. This is truly a place every bass fisherman in Minnesota needs to visit because we finally have a tackle shop in the state that's as dreamy as the ones you find down south. And the staff at Waypoint Angler Supply understands the various needs of us anglers, which is why you'll find the selection there so enticing. Ross and the folks at Waypoint Angler Supply are passionate about carrying the right stuff, providing an authentic customer experience, and they listen to the anglers. And it doesn't end at JDM baits. They stock all the top U.S. brands, as well as local Minnesota brands like Vocelka Fishing and Customs, Arsenal Fishing, Bait Lab Custom Swim Baits, All Terrain Tackle, Bagley Northland, Outcast Tackle, and more. So stop into their store on Lake Minnetonka or visit their website, waypointanglersupply.com. That's waypointanglersupply.com. In the month of September, use the code GALAXY2402 to save 20% on your next tackle binge. Are you ready to reel in your next home purchase or refinance? Supreme Lending's Dream Team can help guide you through the entire mortgage process, from pre-qualification to closing. They have a wide variety of home loan programs in their tackle box, including down payment assistance and first-time homebuyer options. Just ask me. I trusted Aaron Dagas, a bass fisherman just like you and me, and Supreme Lending's Dream Team to help finance my first home. Contact Aaron Dagas and the Dream Team today by scanning the QR code or giving them a call at 763-326-0677. That's 763-326-0677. Did I catch a 7 in there? Or visit their website, aarondages.supremelending.com. That's AARONDAEGES.supremelending.com. As anglers, we develop special bonds with our equipment. There's something magical when you find that perfect jig rod and reel combo for a technique that elevates your confidence on the water. Whether it's a perfectly balanced, crisp, and sensitive jig rod that gives you the highest level of control over your bait, allows you to feel every grain of sand, every bite, and allows you to drive that hook clean, or a rod with the perfect action and taper that seems to keep your chatterbait, swim bait, or whatever it is in the back of the bass's head where it belongs no matter where you throw it, or a rod that allows you to effortlessly cast a lighter bait you used to cuss at on your old combo. These types of magical bonds are rare to find in a mass-produced sweatshop, which is why Vocelka Fishing and Customs came to existence, with the sole purpose of bringing you closer to your passion by enhancing the bond with you, your rod, and the bass. Confidence is everything in bass fishing, and there's no bigger boner buster than losing a big fish, not feeling like you can present your bait correctly. The list goes on and on. Mr. Vocelka is a full-blown artesian craftsman who can build you the perfect rod, no matter the size or action, custom, exactly the way you want it. He also has a wide variety to choose from right on his website, including fan favorites like the 8-foot hair jig rod, the drop shot rod, swim bait rod, the chatter chicken rod, the MH workhorse, and more. Even ice fishing,
You do the whole frozen Swiss cheese thing, the ice fishing. Seen grumpy old men? Well, you can send that jiggle stick back to the antique store because Mr. Vocelka builds custom ice rods in all sizes and actions too. So head on over to his website, vocelkafishing.com. That's VOCELKA fishing.com to enhance your confidence on the water, feel your passion, and catch more bass, baby.
I mean, when I say chasing wind, I'm talking a ripple sometimes. I mean, you can be running down the lake and it's glass slick calm, and you look over and there's a ripple of wind hitting a little section of it.
That's enough?
That's all it takes.
Just like Lake Mead.
Yeah, exactly.
Lake Mead's identical to that. Like, if it's dead slick calm, you're not getting any bites, drive down the lake. Oh, yep, the wind's blowing down this little canyon or chute, like in this section, fires them up.
That was such a big thing for me as an angler, was starting to fish the weather and the day more. And there was guys that kicked my butt for a long time, and it was like they had that sixth sense. Wind switches, we gotta go here,
over
you
there.
know,
Yeah.
stuff like that. I think that's still a thing. Like 2D high speed sonar, Easton Fothergill. Like, I feel like he would take.
Who's that?
Yeah, no.
Just happened to win the last tournament we
punk
were
kid.
at.
And the
punk
tournament
kid.
prior.
Yeah.
I mean,
Two out of
he
the
might
last
cry
three
if he took
tournaments.
his high speed 2D away.
Yeah,
Like,
I love 2D.
looking for life, looking for. I mean, you can do that at 40 miles an hour, yet
Yeah.
no one talks about it. And
Yeah.
I get you guys utilize that a little
I
bit.
love 2D. I mean, I still use 2D a ton. Like, I mean, downscan up front, I can use downscan up front, but I'm still a hardcore 2D guy. And same at the console. I don't really have downscan. I have side clear view, and I have 2D and mapping. That's what I use. I mean, because I know what I'm looking at. If I see a fish on 2D and I can pick them out where a guy would be like, dude, those are rocks. I'm like, no, those are not rocks. Those are bass.
I think what he's saying though is the ability to run with 2D.
Yeah,
and
see the life, like in what the
bait
thermocline,
up in the water column.
the thermocline or whatever. Yeah.
Well, I look at our lakes where we grew up; they're tiny.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I remember, for me, I qualified for a couple national championships down on Hartwell, and I go to Hartwell, I'm like,
Where do I start?
where the fuck am I?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Hartwell's a big lake.
And Easton is, and not to get too much on that train, but what's unique about Easton versus every other angler that's come out of the state of Minnesota is he's the first one not to survive down south, but to win and show dominance down there. And I guess, like, thinking about how big those bodies of water, hacking into, like, everybody calls him a scoper, but he'll be the first proponent to saying these are all tools and you need to hack into your whole system, including your gut, your brain, and all of your know-how to do this. And I feel like the size of the lakes you guys have, if you're efficient with high-speed 2D sonar, finding that zone, I feel like that's probably the quickest way to find it.
Yeah, the zone in the lake is definitely. I mean, and it
I don't
moves
know.
around. And some lakes it's always that zone, but some lakes it's not. It moves.
Well, and I think there's so many other things that Mother Nature throws at us. I mean,
Well, the
we don't
water's
have
high or low or something like that.
Yeah, but we don't have seagulls all year at Table Rock. But I mean, on
I
any
don't
of
like
the
seagulls,
Ozarks,
Mike.
I know you don't like seagulls.
You don't like seagulls, and
Have
I was
me
like,
another beer out there, shooter.
all right, so
On that note,
So I got a 3rd Street Oktoberfest. I'm gonna have you try that.
All right.
This thing is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
3rd Street Brew House out of Cold Spring, Minnesota. I'll let you open it. You're a
All
big
right.
boy. Mike, do you need anything? Or you
I'll take one of those. I'll give one of them a try.
we'll try 'em.
Yeah, we'll give something new a try. It's an Oktoberfest, and we're almost there.
good? We're almost there. This
Yeah.
will be coming out like right in time. There you are, Mike.
So the whole thing about it is, though, is when you go to any body of water, there's usually a telltale. You know, whether it's seagulls, whether it's blue herring setting on the bank.
Yep.
I mean, you look at the lakes over in the east, you know, Murray and those lakes. I mean, dude, when there's a line of either blue herrings or those big white tall birds that sit there on the bank, there's something happening in that area.
Right.
So
And-
you visually see that.
Yeah. You know, and it's the same way with high-speed 2D. When you're running creeks on any body of water and you're seeing nothing on your 2D, and then all of a sudden you run through a creek and there's bait everywhere, you've found that zone. And there's a lot of people that do get caught up in what you were just talking about, fishing history, fishing a specific brush pile, a specific point, not paying attention to what Mother Nature's trying to tell you.
Yeah.
It's an easy thing to do. I mean, I look at this is small stuff, but my finishes this year, I had a pretty bad year because a lot of the lakes I've fished before, I had good finishes on the lakes I've never been to.
Because you had an open mind.
Very.
Correct. And bombed the lakes I've done freaking really good on. And it's like, you go into it and saying, I'm going to have an open mind. But to erase memories, to distinguish a thought from a gut feeling is really tough when you have memories. I think it clouds your gut. For me.
I would agree.
So I guarantee you, Mike and I fished really close to each other at Leech Lake. And if they said, okay, next year you guys are going to Leech Lake almost the same time, we would be hard stint not to spend a lot of our practice in that area. and even if, like, let's say, I mean, we fish largemouth grass fishing.
Yeah.
Even if they killed all the grass, we'd be like, we'd be hard-headed, and then we'd be like, hey, I don't think they're in here.
Yeah.
After a day and a half, you know?
Yeah.
That's totally
Because it led you, that was, your history led you down that rabbit hole.
Bass
you know?
Galaxy light bulb moment. All right. Yeah,
You know
dude.
what I'm saying?
Dude,
I mean,
so much.
that's 1,000% what happens.
You're speaking to my soul, Brett.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, 1,000% that's what happens. You're getting my soul. One sip of this stuff, I'm like,
How is the October? You like it?
it's delicious.
It is
That
good.
is-
isn't
that
it?
It's very.
That's
It's a lighter Oktoberfest.
It is.
I like it.
Very, like, I think it's the
Thumbs
best beer
up.
they've ever put out. So,
Yeah.
Good stuff.
3rd Street Oktoberfest, it's Brett Hite, Mike McClelland approved.
I will totally agree, though. I mean, that is what gets so many anglers in trouble, is going back to history. And I mean, anytime that generally you're successful, it's when you are clueless. You
Yeah.
go into a lake with no history, nothing to go on, and you find what we've been talking about, the life, the zone, and that's when it all comes together.
How do you guys erase your memory? And like, to me, the sport is more mental than any freaking
Dude, I've been trying to
lure we could talk
I've been
about.
trying to buy one of those Men in Black little things like that. You know, where
You
it's
just,
like it just
you just swipe.
Amazon does it, they don't they don't have one on Amazon, and I'm like, because I want to get here like at La Crosse and be like,
You're gonna have to go
like-
to Area
like-
51 because everybody they let into that place. That's what you get on the way out.
I'll be like, oh, where am I? Oh, yeah. Oh, that's the Mississippi River. Perfect. I'll just go put the trolling motor down and go fishing.
Yeah,
Seriously, how do you do that? Like,
It's tough, but you gotta obviously check your history, but you know, Mike and I were just talking about today, like, we've never been here. I mean, it's going to be mid-September. We've never been here this late. So, I mean, things change, especially when you get up north, up here. Things change a lot more rapidly in September than it does at his house and my house.
Yeah.
it's a weird change up here in September. It's almost like it's some lakes it's light switch, and some lakes it's like just they're all of a sudden spread out. And
Yeah.
I'm not allowed to say river, so like
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just literally talking in general here. But it's hard, Mike. How like you fish table rock, right? So my guess is you look shad. Like presence of shad helps you forget
bait
what the
fish,
hell
yeah.
was good last time. Well, there's no shad here. That's what was good last time.
That's the whole key is, and I know a lot of people will call BS on this, but I mean, every time I have a major event at Table Rock, my first day and a half of practice generally, I am going to try, and I've been fishing the lake for 40 plus years. I am going to try to fish places that I've never wet a line. And I know that seems crazy.
I love that.
To think, I can do that on Table Rock. There are so many places on Table Rock Lake still to this day that I've never fished, and that's my first goal.
That's
is
crazy.
And I'm not saying I go into them, I try to force the issue, but I go look at areas that I've not traditionally caught them in, looking for that zone. I'm looking for life. I'm looking for bait. I'm looking for whatever signs
you fight
I can
your memory.
see.
Almost, you intentionally run as far away from you're kind of running away from your memory a little bit.
Well, but
because if you catch one in that spot, you caught one on when you won that tournament last year. How's the rest of your practice going to go?
It's and that's
That
the
leads
thing.
you down the rabbit hole.
No, but that's
Down
the
the
thing
rabbit
that's
hole we
good to be Peaw, because and this goes back to Jeff Creek. We would show up at a lake that we had fished 2 years prior. And, we'd kind of put our game plan together, and, I'd be like, I don't really know where I'm going to start. And, Creed would be like, well, aren't you going to go check where you caught him 2 years ago? And I'm like, dude, I don't even remember where I caught him 2 years ago. There are some people.
I
Jeff
wish I had
Creek
that.
can remember where I caught him better 2 years ago than I personally can.
Yeah,
I
I will
take him one tournament at a time, and I try to just put the history behind me and just go and fish the moment. Aaron to me was probably the biggest person in this sport that really made me realize that. And Aaron came on the scene when I started being successful.
Martins.
Yeah, it was just seeing how he approached things. And you would see Aaron running and running and running, and never wet a line. And it's like,
Really?
it was crazy, how he approached
Didn't look
a
right.
lake.
It didn't look right.
right.
It didn't look right.
So-
it didn't look right.
Aaron seems to be a guy like one of my favorite anglers. Of
I
all
roomed
time.
with Aaron for I don't know
Yeah.
how many years.
He seemed to be like a guy who could think and still, you meet some of the smartest anglers, right? And then they just spin themselves out or whatever it might be. He seemed to be the guy who could think and feel and act really good in that sense. I didn't realize that he erased his memory that good.
I really believe, looking back at
Weed was
watching-
legalized in California first, to be fair.
To watch how Aaron approached a lake, it spun me out at first, but it made me a better angler. That was when I really understood the fact that you can't go on history. You can't go on what you think should work. You just got to be open-minded. I would literally see Aaron running around out in the middle of the lake, and I'd be like, what is he doing out there? He was looking for the thermocline. He was looking for what depth the bait was at. And then when he put all those pieces together, then you would start seeing Aaron pull up on the
more
right,
fine. Yeah.
the right places.
Yeah.
That to me is something that I don't know if I've ever heard talked about Aaron. It's always drop shot or something along those lines, but just how you my favorite part about this podcast is learning how people think and how people approach the game.
Aaron was
and
the
that's
hog
so cool.
snatcher, man.
Dude.
He was the hog snatcher.
the most from a blackbird to catch
Dude,
him on a drop
I-
shot on a bridge.
My
God.
I
What a guy to room with, dude.
I room with him. He's not the guy you want to share information with, because the stuff he's telling you, you're like, huh? It's just way off the. You're like, okay, I need somebody more on my level.
So he's on another planet
Oh,
when he's
yeah.
talking.
I
need a story behind this to help me understand. We've seen the baby blackbird pattern.
You brought it
Yeah.
up. That's the best story of all.
That's the
time.
most
Yeah.
gangster thing I think any bass fisherman's ever. Oh yeah, no, they're eating baby blackbirds right now,
Yeah.
and here's why I know that, and yeah, this is why I'm going to do this the rest of the tournament and kick that sweet ass of yours.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
But there's been probably a lot of moments, that was one of probably the weirdest tournament bites ever covered. But you guys have probably experienced maybe just some weird, crazy bites, where you can't explain why or what. It's hard to probably think back. Peaw probably has.
I
nothing.
can't even remember.
But
Yeah.
with Aaron, what's your favorite Aaron memory? Would you say, if you're to look back?
Yeah. Does it have to be? Can it be on the water or off the water?
Any
Okay.
memory,
So,
dude. There's no rules.
I know this. It came to my mind like this. So Aaron and I and Leslie's his wife, we're rooming together. We're pre-practicing for Louisiana Delta, and we're staying in this rat hole strip motel. I mean, like, it's freaking horrible.
We all stayed in those places.
Yeah, that's what we did.
Until we learned about the Mother
camping.
Nature way of camping.
So I get out of the shower, okay? Get all my clothes on and everything, and I got a wet towel. Aaron gets out of the shower, okay? And he's got his towel wrapped around him. And, dude, I wind this thing up, and I hit it, and it sounded like a bullwhip. And it hit him right on the butt cheeks. And, dude, he turned around, and Leslie is like, oh, shit.
No.
Like, oh, no, you did not just do that. And Aaron looks at me, and, he goes in a, straight sprint. I haul ass out the door and haul ass down the strip motel, and he is chasing me in his towel, and he had the look on his face like he wanted to kill me. Like, seriously, kill me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
If he catches me, I'm going to die.
Going
You're
down.
bigger than him, right?
No.
Dude, Aaron was like, yeah, but he was like,
tall.
he was tall
Aaron's
and
like-
scrappy.
Yeah, well, I was like 22 years old. I
Have
was
you
a
seen
little
pictures
skinny.
of B? Have you seen pictures of B Hite from those days? You need to pull one up and throw it in on this podcast. for
Probably
sure.
will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cold timestamp.
Yeah.
B height in his prime
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
body shape picture.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's my ultimate Aaron story. I mean, we have a bunch of them.
Oh,
but-
I mean, the biggest thing, about Aaron was, Aaron was one of the most healthy people that I ever fished around, but also had some bad habits, and, we would be cooking dinner, rigging tackle, and Aaron's out on a jog, and
Really?
hey, dude, you want to go run with me tonight? And it's just like he was so into and in tune with keeping his mind right when he was on the water. I learned a ton from the guy, but it was just like Aaron was always working to be better at what he did, no matter what we were doing. I mean, always.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm very meticulous like Aaron was, but I mean, Aaron's like over OCD. So I'll tell you another Aaron story. We're Lake Eufaula Campground State Park. Me and David Walker were sitting here, and we got two campers set up. We're cooking these giant ribeyes, man. I mean, just like the most beautiful ribeyes, drinking beer, Here comes Aaron. He's camped 3 stalls down from us. Here he comes. He's jogging. And he's like, hey, guys, what's up? What are you doing? We're like, nothing. We're cooking some ribeyes. And he's like, oh, yeah. Okay. Hey, you guys want to go for a jog with me? And it's like, no, we're drinking beer and cooking ribeyes. And he's like, what? Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'll be back. So here he goes. Does big lap, like mile and a half. Comes back. Hey, guys, what's up? Aaron, you want a beer? Okay, I'll take a couple sips. Takes a couple sips. All right, I'll see you later. It's like, I mean, he made us feel so bad. Like, Aaron's jogging miles of laps after practice, after like a 12-hour day of practice. We're cooking beautiful ribeyes, drinking beer, and Aaron's doing hot laps.
As I said, he had a few bad habits to mix in with his good habits.
Everybody
It's
does.
so funny.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, pretty cool. I mean, God bless him. We love him.
I
No
think
doubt.
it's cool. I heard about Carol Martins and how good she was at bass fishing.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I never got to experience that just because of
Yeah.
the the area that they fished in
Yeah,
before
I
Aaron
mean-
came out east. So
Yeah, Carol's she fished a lot. Her and Aaron were team partners. They won everything in Southern California. As team partners. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
pretty impressive
Yeah, super cool though.
for
But
sure.
I bet, yeah, that I just can't imagine what that was like. I mean, such a healthy guy. It's so surprising.
Yeah, I mean,
for a lot of people.
like I say, cancer does not discriminate.
No.
It does not. It doesn't discriminate.
We got
But,
we got to get this back on the happy train.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeez.
All right. Yeah.
All right.
180. You've probably seen, like, you probably witnessed some clutch decisions made by others, but you guys can probably think back to a few clutch decisions that maybe were a pivot point in your career. And it's weird how fishing works. It's a game of decisions. That's what it is. And it's weird how, and I've listened to podcasts where you talk about getting that break or getting that whatever, but it could be just anything. There's moments that I can think of where you made this one decision and this happened and then this happened. And there's a lot of tournaments we fish where we try to make that one decision, and most of the time it doesn't happen, and it's really hard to replicate. And I think it's probably one of the most frustrating things that keeps us doing it. But you each probably have an example of that, and I don't know who should answer that first, but
I mean, honestly, you know, when I look back at my career, I mean, probably one of the most meaningful tournaments throughout my career happened at the Alabama River in 2004. You know, it was prior to the Elite Series starting. I had actually qualified for the Elite Series but turned down the invitation because I wasn't in a position to spend that money to go fish the Elite Series.
Mm-hmm.
And
because it was $55,000.
I mean, we went from
18,000 to 55,000.
You know,
in one year.
Boat wrap requirements.
Yeah, and we had 3 months to commit.
wow. What year was that?
04
to 05, yeah.
Yep.
So I had declined my opportunity to join the Elite Series and fish the Opens that year and qualified for the Open Championship. Went to the Alabama River and was so discouraged. I mean, we all have people that we room with over the course of time, and it was just one of those events that I was just kind of on my own that week, you know, and tried to talk to a few guys. I was having like one of the worst practices I can ever remember having. And the last day of the event, I was about done. I mean, I'm coming in basically, and I am running down the river, and I see this one lonely laydown. It was a new laydown. I mean, it was like still green. You know, it was a bush that had fallen in the water, and I like just whipped over there and picked a little brown jig up and pitched it in there and got a bite and jerked, and it was a 3-pounder. And I'm like, well, at least I got a starting spot. I mean, that's basically the way I felt about my practice.
Is that when you went and bought the chainsaw and started sawing
No,
down
I
trees?
didn't saw any trees down. So essentially,
We might need to hear that.
yeah,
No,
no,
I'm just
that was
saying,
that was David Dudley. That wasn't me.
that was Dudley.
Yeah,
that was a
Dudley.
pulling.
I thought
That was a pulling chainsaw.
I thought about it a time or two.
You're like, man, if I
Yeah.
could get a couple more of these trees in the water.
but I mean, honestly, it was one laydown that made a complete difference in the outcome of that event. I mean,
Sure.
I ended up expanding on it a little bit, found some, you know, non-visible logs in the water and various things that carried me through a complete tournament event. And that to me was probably the most meaningful point in my career that allowed my career to continue, because at that point I wasn't going to fish the Elites, but that qualified me for the Classic. It gave me a second invitation to the Elites, and it gave me a little pocket in the pocket, or a little change in the pocketbook to commit to fishing next year. And you know, things happen for a reason. I mean, you look at so many guys' careers. I mean, I know Brett's been through it. Everybody you look at, those wins come at the right time. You know, when you're mature enough to understand what it means, and you really take hold of what you learn from that experience, is what, you know, drives a lot of anglers forward in their career.
I completely agree. I mean, we've all had those moments where it's like, man, you make the right decision in a tournament, or right decision, you know, moving forward in your career, I mean, for me, it was that same 2004, you know, and I had a great 2003, went to the Classic, was on top of the world, and 2004 didn't have a great season. They had 2005, 2006 is when the Elites came out, and it was going to be 55,000. I'm like, okay, I mean, I could put up the money, but if I don't have a good year, I am going to be screwed.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to be, like, I knew that. So I took a year off, Then I went to FLW, got a team deal. 07. So I think it was 2006 is when the elite started.
Could have been.
Yeah, 4 and then 5. 5 was 2006 because 2007 is when I started fishing FLW. Got a team deal, had a great year that year. 2008, I go and win back to back from coast to coast
On a jackhammer.
One?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
chatterbait.
bladed jig.
Bladed jig,
Yeah. Pre-jackhammer.
Yeah.
So, just making the right life decisions. I mean, like, don't put yourself in the situation, you young anglers watching right now, that everybody has a bad year. I don't care how hard you try. Everyone can have a bad year. Mm-hmm. So do not put yourself in a financial...
Hey guys, Gaff here with Waypoint Angler Supply. I'm hanging out here at our JDM wall. We got a large variety of product. Hold on. Hey guys, Gaff here with Waypoint Angler Supply. I'm just out here hanging out at our JDM wall with my buddy Teal, and we're going over some JDM product. We've got ourselves some Fish Arrow, some Duo Realis, Depths, and G-Crack, all for you. But it's not just the tackle that we've got. We've got ourselves some reels, some rods, all from Japan, some BFS stuff, all the good stuff that you're looking for from Japan that you can't find anywhere else. So swing on into Waypoint Angler Supply and get yourself stocked up.
Teal's Bass Galaxy is now offering intergalactic merchandise. That's right. We got apparel now, baby. Check out our website. We got a variety of apparel, hats, bucket hats, sweatshirts, t-shirts, all the finest goods. So stop on our website, tealsbassgalaxy.com, click on the apparel tab, and start looking good, baby.
Situation that if you have a bad year, that you cannot live, or you are in so debt that you can never get out of it.
Yeah.
Because Mike and I have both seen it with, I mean, like 50, 60 anglers.
Yeah.
That they get themselves in that position. Sometimes you got to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to step back. I'm going to take a breath. But don't put yourself in your whole financial career on the line. If all you can afford is 1 year and you're living paycheck to paycheck for that year, hopefully, I should take that back. If you go to the first tournament and you're saying, I have to get a check to go to the next one, do not show up.
Take a year off.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that year off. I feel like,
it was huge. I fished 5 days a week. And one of our lakes, they extended the dam, and the fishing was phenomenal. Like in 06, I caught 8 or 10 10-pounders on that lake. Like the fishing was absolutely phenomenal, like giant ones. Like it had that new lake effect, and it was absolutely phenomenal. And I just kind of got back to my core and was like, learned, like, hey, I'm going to go figure out how to hunt bass.
Built the confidence.
That's right.
So you used it as a year to progress, not...
Yeah. How to hunt. I mean, that's what we're doing. Okay. Aaron, I would say the biggest thing is finding the fish. Like, there's a lot of techniques or a lot of fish. Like, I can take, a very novice fisherman in a lot of techniques. If I find the bass, you could catch them if you weren't a fisherman, or and if you had some experience, you could catch them. So
it's all about finding them.
It's all about hunt. It's just like a deer hunter. We're hunting the bass, 100%.
Yep.
That's it. Like, whether we got to be sneaky or we just go freaking full throttle towards them.
You got to get in that zone. That's what it amounts to.
Yeah.
If you don't find them, you can't catch them.
Well, it's the losingest sport there is, and I think,
You think?
Yeah, I know it, and I think the people who've made careers in the sport are the ones who've learned to live with that and understand it. And I think it's a sport that a lot of people burn themselves out because the highs are too high, the lows are too low. And I think there's a lot of anglers that can't handle that. You know what I mean? Like, they can't handle getting their butts kicked, but it's part of it. Like,
yeah, being humble is what makes you strive and be a better angler.
I think the other thing there, though, is being diverse in what you do. And I mean, I look at, Brett's career and a lot of anglers' careers that have thrived in this industry, and it's generally not all because of your fishing abilities. I mean, Brett and I both we're both tinkers. We're both trying to figure out how to make a better mousetrap all the time. Mm-hmm. And I mean, the fact that we've both had the opportunity to design lures for companies has been a big part of it. And I think there's too many anglers out there that put too much emphasis on the fishing. You've got to catch them to get to the position of being able to do what Brett and I have been able to do. But you've got to be more diverse in your abilities other than just catching fish. I mean, the whole social media deal. I mean, I'm an old man. But
Peaw.
I learned pretty quick that when social media hit, you better get on the bandwagon. Am I doing the best job out there? Maybe not.
It's not that fun to post on Facebook. Let's be honest.
I mean,
you guys enjoyed. I don't enjoy doing that.
But it's an evil necessity.
It
it's
is
something we have to do.
I mean, people. That's how we get our name out, get our sponsor's name out, and just like stupid podcasts like this. Not saying it's stupid.
Whatever, man.
Yeah.
Whatever, man.
Edit.
No, I'm keeping it.
Yeah.
I want to know how you feel.
But no, like I'm just saying, like podcast.
Sound like a flap rim guy. I'm just kidding.
So I mean, like podcasts, just free flowing podcasts like this is what people want to watch. They want to get raw footage of people and I drinking Oktoberfest.
People have been fed fakeness their whole lives, and all of a sudden, like, there's a bit of realness. And believe it or not, people don't like the fake Brett Hite. People don't like the fake Mike McClelland.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, I grew up, and I would say, I'm just going to give you 2 examples. So you had maybe 3 examples.
Maybe 3.
So you had Roland Martin was a phenomenal fisherman and a phenomenal spokesperson. Mm-hmm. Okay, he had the whole package. He could speak. So. He could speak. The next one is Kevin Van Dam. Could speak, promotion, beautiful, like everything. Yeah. And then you had a Rick Clunn who was pretty much he was a catcher. And not the biggest, best promoter.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
100%.
So when I grew up, I was like, okay, like Kevin Van Dam just was gaining ground when I started fishing, and Mike and
about the same, yeah.
Yeah. And so I was like, the total package is you got to be able to speak, talk well, represent your sponsors, and catch bass, obviously. So now
it's just gone a few steps further.
Yeah. Now, I mean, if you can catch bass, but if you can speak, and then you got a social media channel that, just like
type, you have to edit, you have to film.
Just like I was saying, that this random girl who is kind of maybe not cute, but yeah, she can cast something out, and she doesn't know how to rig something. Gets 100,000 views.
Does
high likelihood of back problems.
Spinning reel upside down.
High likelihood of back problems.
Or no, but she here's the spinning reel. It's down on the bottom. Okay. It's like, oh my gosh.
Holds her casting trigger like a pistol.
Yeah. She learned that from something else.
She should know to just put her palm the whole thing. I would think.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you doing that? Like, what's that one finger stuff? But no, dude. That is what it is. And
it's a full package. I mean, these young anglers, you have to, you got to be good at social media. You got to be able to talk to fans, sponsors, represent your sponsors, and you have to fish good,
What other sport is like that? Is there another sport
Ping
where
pong.
you don't just
Ping
have
pong, come
no,
on
dude.
now.
No, dude. Can't understand
ping
him
pong.
anyway.
Nah, I mean, if
I
there-
love ping pong.
Oh,
I have a ping pong table in my garage. It's
Yeah.
probably the only other sport I like.
if there's any
Pickleball.
if
Great
there's any
sport.
comparison at all, it's NASCAR. I mean, those guys are groomed
Yeah.
to crawl out of the car
and just
and spit out
I'd like to
everything
thank
that they're
Home
supposed
Appliances for this
to
win.
Yeah.
spit out.
If
Yeah.
I wouldn't have had that washing machine
Yeah.
from Home Depot last week, I
Exactly.
would not have
Man,
won this
I wouldn't
race.
have this fire suit. I mean, my car caught on fire. They put it out, and I still won the race. Thank you, Maytag.
I don't know what to do with my hands.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with my hands.
You're on fire, Ricky. Oh man.
Anarchy. I don't know what that is, but
I
love
like
it.
it. Yeah. Oh man.
That's a great movie. One of my favorites. They don't make them like that anymore. But you were talking about fishing, how it's boring to watch.
And I mean, I think that's the one thing that is going to be interesting about next year. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, there's one of the organizations that has just completely put a ban on forward-facing sonar.
Yeah.
The Bassmaster has basically limited our screen size. They've limited us to one transducer. And I think it is going to create a situation where guys are going to have to be a little bit more versatile. Major League Fishing has not completely made their announcements. There's, been talk about the fact that they're going to ban forward-facing sonar in the BFL level. I think that's in an effort to draw more co-anglers back to the competitions there. But we've yet to see what they're going to do on the upper level. I think they're in a great spot because the way their format rolls, they could do a lot of different things. I mean, they could do, like there's been discussion about one period of forward facing. Maybe it's one day with forward, one day without forward. You've got a group A and a group B that fish 2 days. So there's so many different options. But I really do believe that the average angler, you can only watch so much of the same thing.
Yeah.
And enjoy it. And I think that the versatility that some of these organizations are going to put into what we're doing next year is going to open that up. I don't know if there's any truth to it or not, but I've heard there are some state agencies that might consider getting involved in, the forward-facing sonar deal. That could put us in a situation where if we went to particular states, we may not be able to use forward-facing sonar. I just think there's got to be a good, healthy mix of some traditional fishing versus forward-facing sonar. I love it. I mean, I won my last tournament 2017, utilizing 100%. Would not have won the event if it hadn't been for Garmin Panoptics.
Right.
Won the Open on Table Rock Lake 100% because of Panoptics.
Yeah.
I mean, every bass I caught, my boat was never shallower. I think one bass I caught on a mixed stick on a cedar tree that I saw on Panoptics in about 20 foot of water. But every other bass I caught was out 40 to 80 foot deep, fishing bait schools and standing timber.
That's crazy.
It was so incredible to see what that technology allowed us to do. But I have spent the last 5 weeks in Minnesota prior to Leach and just enjoying what you guys have to benefit from up here and going to these various lakes across Minnesota and catching them on a spinnerbait, a buzzbait, flipping a jig, old
It's
school
fun.
fishing. And it really made me realize that I've got so caught up in the new technology that I've kind of forgot how much fun it was to just go out and fish.
It's fun.
And, I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens this next year.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too.
Fishing, I mean, I remember as a kid, like, no offense, Brett, but drop shot fishing was the most boring shit to watch ever.
Yeah.
Like,
No, I
as
hear
a
ya.
kid, like,
Yeah.
growing up, it's like, but I think there's an opportunity right now for fishing to be more fun to watch than it's ever been, ever. And we have the technology to do it as a spectator, to make it truly a spectator sport that I think people would pay to watch. And NFL's doing it with the NFL Red Zone, fourplex and boxes for your fantasy team and
Sure.
blah, 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 blah. But imagine if you could pick which angler you watched and you had up to 4 boxes and you want to learn as a young angler, right? I want to see the guy catching them, and I want to see the guy doing something different, see how the day unfolds. You could get 4 boxes going. You could get Kyoya, Fujita, and maybe you get to see his live scope. Those tournaments I learn a lot if we're teaching about technology, right? And then I got Jason Christie throwing a spinnerbait down the bank, and then I got, this guy, he's fishing boat docks, and now I'm watching how the weather changes that day, right? When these guys are catching them, how that day unfolds. And really, from a spectator's standpoint, I would pay good money for that. That's entertaining. Like, if you're a family, now you get to watch your brother, your sister, your niece, nephew fish all day. And then you can watch, choose your own adventure, if you will.
I just don't know if we're that far.
Well, I think the technology exists.
No. I understand the technology exists.
I think it would elevate the viewership enough.
No, I get what you're saying.
To make, we're talking about growing the sport, non-endemics, like the viewership.
Tilt the teeter-totter?
Yeah, teeter and totter.
Yeah. Teeter and
P and paw.
Yeah,
I
hear you. I hear you.
I feel like you guys have been in those.
The technology is there. It's just, I mean, it's just if the technology is there for us to have that technology on our boat, but it's an investment for bass, MLF, whatever, to have that capability
to
feed. And for that feed, and it is a huge investment for them,
Well, you're gonna get situations where, guess what, there's no service, and guess what, you can't watch this guy
and you're
today,
gonna get
right?
some situations you don't want to see too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
for sure.
Yeah.
So maybe there's an option. I mean, I don't know, but like when people start talking about how the sport's boring to watch, I feel like that's a platform thing, and I feel like there's enough people in the sport now. We're talking about high school fishing. There's 200 anglers on some of these Minnesota lakes that beat them to death. Like,
well, but
they don't know shit about the history of our sport. That's why we're talking. I hate when a high school kid sits in my boat and I look back and I ask them, like, you remember Mike McClelland or Brett Hite, and they don't know who they are. I'm like, there's a serious problem with that.
That is one thing that, does make you kind of scratch your head, because when you look at the era that Brett and I came from, I mean, I remember the days when Roland was still competing. I remember, the classics that Rick Clun has won. I remember all of those things, and I think that is something that we're losing sight of a little bit, is the history of the sport and how it's evolved. But I think it's the world we live in today. I mean, everybody's focus is not where it was 10 years ago.
I have a really good point. So you get a high school angler, the way he learns is on YouTube and these monsters, that have big YouTube channels and huge social medias. We weren't in on that first giant wave. Obviously, we have really good social media followings, but like these young kids, they're following those newest, biggest guys that their algorithm is showing up. So they have no idea. They don't know that. They didn't follow the history of bass fishing.
They don't know why they're throwing that jackhammer. Brad.
Exactly.
They have no
They don't
idea.
know why they're throwing that rock crawler, Mike.
Yeah.
All they got to do,
bothers me.
All they got to do is research it a little bit.
Yeah.
Doesn't show up in the first 3 on YouTube.
We're at a beautiful place. We're looking for a good week here, going. I don't think forward-facing sonar is going to play a huge role this week.
It's going to be traditional fishing.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah, we're going to go bass fishing. We're on the upper Mississippi River. It's nice, and I almost need a little sweatshirt. Sorry, guys at home, but it's 110 at home. But looking for a good week and putting our heads down and catch a bunch of largemouth bass, and smallmouth can play here on this river.
Think?
Yeah, they have been known to play.
for sure.
Just don't have to chase them wily spots up here. That's a good thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Mike, it's been cool to play with rods, and I think this is actually probably a question for both of you. Being my tournament partner, one of my best friends is Dane Vocelka, and Vocelka makes custom fishing rods and stuff. And I was talking to Stevie Menz on the way here, who's a Phoenix rep up here, and he was he remembers you when you were a champion boats rep, which I thought was cool. But he was saying that you had kind of pioneered a rod where the guides kind of go around it.
I'm not going to say I pioneered it.
Well,
now.
I don't know anything.
The
It's the first I heard of it.
revolver,
the round wrap rod.
Yeah,
So when
the
I started my
revolver
career, when I started
Yeah.
my career, and again, we're all out there looking for a sponsorship opportunity, and I was introduced to a gentleman by the name of Bud Earhart, and he built I think it was called the Fishing Stick. He built a round wrapped guided rod, and it's honest to goodness, when you pick one up, when you catch a bass on it, it feels different than any traditional rod you'll ever use. It just
Really?
never really gained favor amongst the in crowd of anglers.
Sure.
But it was a very unique design. You know how a traditional rod, when you set the hook and a fish is really pulling hard, the rod kind of has
Got
a
a blank
roll.
twist.
Yeah, it will actually try to twist, and the round wrap on those rods actually would take that twist out of it. So when you held your reel, you never had any rod twist.
Sure.
And it was really a cool concept, and it's interesting. The first 2 tournaments I won, I was throwing that round wrap rod, and like, again, it's like a lot of things in this industry. Some things take hold and take off. If social media would have been in the game in 1996 or 7, I think we would all be throwing a lot of round wrap rods, but it never got to be mainstream.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting, like with playing with rods and like helping with some of that stuff with Dane. Like each rod has a spine, right, or a balance or a point spline, and you can put the guides on one side or the other,
And
it'll
it's
change,
gonna roll harder.
and it'll affect how the blank twists and turns. And it was like that was a whole new world that I've become just fascinated with, and I'm sure part of that chatterbait thing that you guys were playing with, just like, was how to have the best landing percentage on a chatterbait,
Sure.
which I think a lot of us threw way too stiff a rod, you know. But it's an interesting balance point, when you're mixing heavy vegetation and having enough to get it out, So getting your guys' perspective on rods, being that you've probably held, felt, touched, and thrown more than most people listening, it's pretty cool. And
I think
I don't know how people used to fish in the 80s with what they had.
I mean, I think that goes back to what I said earlier. I mean, Brett and I are both always trying to figure out something that works better for a technique or a certain method of fishing that we utilize. And I mean, you've designed some phenomenal rods across the board.
Yeah. I mean, the whole deal was when the chatterbait first came out, people look at it, it's a jig, so they put it on a medium heavy graphite or heavy action graphite. Well, it's a moving bait. It's just like a crankbait. You're not going to throw a crankbait on a medium heavy fast action or a heavy action fast action graphite rod.
Yeah.
So I just came up with a, throwing it like on a fiberglass, but a medium or a heavy action glass rod that has that parabolic bend, so it allows the fish to get the bait without pulling it out. And what you got to think about is, if you have a bait, your rod's like your rubber band, okay? So you have 20-pound, and if you have a rod that has a big rubber band, if the fish starts coming towards you, the rod still keeps pressure on it. But if you have a rod that's literally a 2x4, okay, you get the fish on, it barely bends like this, he starts coming towards you, and then it goes slack, you got no contact. So that's the whole thing with the glass rod. It allows tension on the bait, which is in the fish's mouth, all the time, because the rod is your rubber band. That's the whole key.
Learning about like the versatility of that bait and the rod and depending, like there's guys that throw a chatterbait different than me and have success with it. Like I know guys who do it with braided line on a really glass rod, just use their reel to get it through the grass, use a heavier one with something that makes it, and have success with that. And I know other guys that 6-3 to 1, lightest chatterbait they can get by with, and it's a total different scenario. I don't know when to do what, Brett, and I guess I'm curious. You've probably played with all of it enough to understand this is a really good situation for a 3/8 ounce. This is a really good situation for a 1 1/4.
It's all about contact with the grass.
Sure.
100%. I don't care if you're using a 3/4 or an 8 ounce and a quarter. You want to have contact with the grass. I always use 20-pound FC Sniper fluorocarbon Sunline. I mean, I don't use braid. So if the bait has to hit the grass at some point in your cast, because if you're just winding, if you're fishing grass, I mean, other places, yes, but if we're the predominant place where the jackhammer shines, obviously, is aquatic vegetation. It has to hit that grass at some point in time in that cast. If it doesn't, you're not. Either you need to go heavier, obviously if it's not hitting it, or if you're bogging down too much, you need to go lighter.
That's, I think, the struggle I have sometimes. We have a lot of grass here, right? And it grows differently in different places.
Sure,
And
so you need
there's
to have
times where, there's sometimes where you bog it, and there's sometimes where you maybe can't effectively or
touch it or it hits.
You only have so much time in a day, and you only have. I want to throw a swim jig too. I want to,
There's a lot of different things to throw. Yeah,
like you probably have developed some sort of system with that, if you will.
Yeah.
And I guess I don't know how much time we have, but I know that we could all probably benefit a little bit from
you need a 3/8,
hell yeah,
a half, 3/4, and
you need
ounce
all of
and a
them.
quart.
Right.
Yeah, just depending on where your grass is,
Well, shit, there doesn't even need to be grass. We do it on rocks on that Mille Lacs lake we're talking about.
Yeah, that too. I mean, if I'm fishing, which I think of Mille Lacs is like a deeper water lake, even though it's not deep, but not a lot of aquatic vegetation. Fishing smallmouth with a chatterbait, 3/4 is number one.
That's your go-to.
Speed.
Yeah, I can get it down in that depth range and keep the speed up 100%.
Yeah.
Because to get a half ounce down to that depth, I got to kind of crawl it. I mean, we all know smallmouth, they want it in in clear water. They want it faster.
Mm-hmm. Like the blades, and this one's shiny, this one's not. And like I think so. Talking to like Easton and like Bo Browning's a good partner of his, and making chatterbait bites work on places that no one else is making a chatterbait bite work. To me, is one of the most gangster things about the good chatterbait fisherman, and I feel like there's something to that because it's either keeping it in your hand longer or understanding that I'm on a place that this isn't maybe the deal, so I need to just change my approach.
Yeah, I mean it's just switch and mount. I mean, if you find the right chatterbait fish, I mean, if I had one chatterbait ever to throw the rest of my life, it'd be green pumpkin. Green pumpkin blade, green pumpkin skirt, green pumpkin Yamamoto Zaco trailer. And I guarantee you, if they're biting a chatterbait, I will get some bites on that if I have to dial it in from there, just like with Mike's rock crawler. He's going to throw whatever his confidence.
We've said that so many times tonight.
Confidence color is he's gonna catch them on that, and then maybe he catches them and they're outside the lip, and then he's like, I'll try this color, and then they have it freaking gorged. Yeah.
Yep.
So I mean,
it's a similar process to any bait.
It's 1,000%. Yeah.
Just no one else is probably throwing it enough because they don't have the same amount of confidence.
And they don't have the jiggle.
Jiggle.
Yeah, the height
Yeah.
index.
It is all about truly fishing a bait. I mean,
Confidence.
I know that growing up, my brother and I fished a ton of tournaments together. And our big deal back then, when we were younger, is like, we were focused about what we were doing is like, you've got to be the bait. You've got to visualize, what that bait's doing as you're pulling it through a brush pile or as I'm cranking a rock crawler on the bottom. You've got to visualize what it's doing. And I mean, just like Brett with all of his different weights and colored blades, I mean, yeah, we've got all different color rock crawlers, but we've also got 4 different rock crawlers. You've got the original 55 that's designed to fish in like 9 to 14 foot of water. I know when I first came out with the rock crawler, all of the hardcore wiggle wart guys were like, you can't throw this in the same place you throw a wiggle wart. It wasn't designed to throw where you threw the original wiggle wart.
Yeah.
Then we came with the MD. That bait was designed to throw in 4 to 8 foot of water.
Yeah.
So you've got to match the bait to the situation you're fishing. Then we came out with the version, the 50.
I like that
And
one too.
the 50 was an ideal forage size for, we talked about it earlier, those
Small crawfish.
small crawfish.
Yeah.
Fish get keyed in on smaller forage a lot of times, and it's all about letting the fish tell you what they want. I mean, generally when I hit the water, and I know I've seen Brett in this same situation, he's probably going to have a 3/8, a half, and a 3/4 always tied on the deck of his boat. I'm generally, when I start practice, I'm going to have an MD, a 55, a 50, and a 50 DD, because I'm going to let the fish tell me which bait they want more often than not.
And I feel like the game used to be the guys who would just let the fish tell them what to do. Those guys would have a lot of success. And now I feel like it's how quick you can do it.
There's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
Like now it's
Well,
a matter of, I just don't feel like I'm as quick at it as this guy.
But in the Bass Opens this year, you have 4.5 days of practice.
That's
you
just
don't
it.
You don't have to be quick. I mean, I got over here this year, because I chose to, and I was like, the first tournament, I'm like, I haven't had this much practice in like 15 years. You have to be on your game, like very, very high speed. And I've taken that approach at the end, later in the year, just like, hey, slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah.
Like if you have 4.5 days, dude, you don't need to be practicing, because from the beginning of practice to the 4.5 days,
It's gonna change.
is completely different.
Yeah.
So you need to put the hammer down the last couple days and a half, because that's kind of how the fishery is going to be fishing a little bit.
Sure.
So
Sure.
And you've got to fish your instincts. You've got to, again, allow the fish to tell you what they're doing and what you need to be doing.
yeah.
I think the only thing that'll cloud a guy's instinct is like, there's those days where you keep a bait in your hand long enough and it pays off, and then there's days where you pull it out of your hand and
that's going to happen. That's just fishing.
Fair enough.
That's just fishing. But
I have to pee.
yep. Well, it's been a good time.
It has been.
Yep.
Dude, this is awesome. I bet you guys are hungry.
So
Yeah.
we're starving.
It's dinner time. The
Yep.
sun's about to go down, and
The
we're,
mosquitoes are coming out.
Yeah, I can feel it starting to get me.
Well, Mike McClelland, Brett Hite, this has been a pleasure. Bass Galaxy, checking in, checking out. Done deal.
We're out.
Yep.